see you all.
And it is lovely to be seen.
And it's good to see you two, Anya. We missed you last week.
And I haven't got to learn any lines.
Yes. And you did it very well, Ting, very well.
And he got so glamorous while doing it. Oh my goodness.
Didn't he just? So where is the costume for this week?
Well, I've got the baggy trousers on, you just can't see them.
Right, let's go straight into it then. The semi-final, the penultimate episode. 4 sewers left for 1940s week.
Dun, dun, dun.
Do you like the thought of 1940s week?
Well, I'm sure we've done it before, which then also begs the question of why do we have all these other ridiculous weeks when you could have lots of different things. You could have a 1920s week, you could have a 1960s week. You know, I mean, I'm not saying every week should be that, but there's plenty of scope within that, as we saw, to get both male and female garment out of it, which I think is more of a challenge than just constantly making dresses and skirts and blouses.
Yeah, it's very true, actually, very, very true. And there were some fabulous garments created this week. I loved it. I am a big fan of those trousers. I think, was it you, Stuart, were just like, I could see you in a pair of those. And I was like, and yes. They actually own a few pairs of those already.
It was a great episode, and that the Oxford bags, I mean, I'd never heard of them. I recognised them. I didn't know what they were called, but the historical moments, because we've obviously only got 4 sewers now, we've got a lot of time to fill. I have to say, I would still prefer more sewing visuals than having to fill out with lots of features, but the historical features were good, though.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, you can't dispute with a bit of Amber and her history. I love her.
Definitely.
Yeah. And she's so glamorous as well. It's just she's a joy to have on screen.
Yes.
So let's go straight into it then. The 4 of them. Technically, not a difficult challenge. I was chatting with Carol yesterday. Quite a good challenge to reinforce the skills. So they should be doing something really good.
Yeah, I mean, the skills were there. I think it wasn't as easy as just a pair of trousers, you know, the turn up and the lined pockets and everything like that. That was where you were going to get that differentiation between the designs.
Yeah, and the zip protector and stuff like that. Those sort of things wouldn't necessarily always be part of the average trouser.
True. And it was nice to have that extra animation on the zip to learn a bit more about how complicated that zip was. So we'll do the running order. I've got Raf, Serena, Fari, Rebecca. So Raf in his olive green trousers.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice colour.
Yeah, I agree. I know people are going to be shocked. I'm going to be agreeing with you, Ting. My Jesus.
I know. It's a new world order out there.
I really liked his trousers. I think he did a really good job, but he did have a few things. I'm not sure we were sort of mentioning if he necessarily deserved first.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about the marks around the zip, the pin marks where obviously there are holes, or there was just something about that area.
Yeah, you're just checking it. Very good.
Wow.
But he also, because we've talked about it in quilting as well, where you have the stitch and the ditch, so you can hide the stitch. Something that Serena did really nicely. But you could see his stitches pretty most of the way around. He managed to catch all his material because he said he struggles with that. But yeah, he didn't stitch in the ditch as cleanly as Serena did.
No, and I think, you know, I like Raf. In fact, you know, he's going to be the one you're going to ask me in probably about 30 minutes time on who I want to win, and that'll probably be him. But we've had such an issue with the judging this year that, you know, I have to put my hands up and say he didn't deserve first place there. You know, there wasn't anything as glaringly wrong with Serena's as you could see. I mean, there wasn't masses wrong with Raf's, but, you know, that stitch in the ditch bit, you know, you could see that stitching on the front, and that's a skill that she'd managed to do. But, you know, as I said, this year, the judging no longer surprises me, really.
Yeah.
I mean, let's go on to Serena.
It comes down to if they've given Serena first so many times, maybe they're like, oh well, maybe we give it to Raf. But then again, we talked about this last week, where, you know, you try to help out the other student and they clearly didn't do it and whatever. But
Serena's garment was pretty perfect, wasn't it? I mean, they made some feature of this pleat or bobble or something at the back, was it?
It wasn't the where she'd done it. The fabric had rippled slightly,
Yeah.
which Raf's hadn't. But then you could see, you've got a ripple on hers, and you could see the stitching on his.
Yeah.
I suppose the argument is that the stitching was less noticeable than the ripple because the ripple went around the waistband.
Yeah.
But sewing wise, I thought that it was always going to be tough between those two. But I thought she pipped him slightly.
Yeah, I think so as well. And the ripple as well, that just came from over pressing rather than
a technical error. You're right.
Yeah.
Well, no, but the technical error is the overpressing. You've got to get it right so that you don't end up with that ripple at the end of the day.
Absolutely. But like if you put down stitch in the ditch, and we all know how fun that can be and how very hard it is to get that clean the entire way around the waistband.
Well, and you also have to remember that he was stitching in the ditch from the opposite side. And that was what was, difficult about it as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about Fari? Technically, was it just that button that caused an issue? It was a very good make, wasn't it?
Well, I don't think she'd done the turn-ups quite right. She should have hemmed them before she turned them or something.
Yeah, she did
as well.
Yeah, so the turn-ups were wrong, and she didn't have the hook and bar. And when she tried, she almost got away with disguising pretty well with a pin. But
those researchers wouldn't let that go by, though, would they?
No,
sure.
Absolutely not. But it just comes down to we're in the semi-finals. She hadn't finished, and
but this is again where I mentioned it last week, where the producers, editors, or whatever of this show have a duty of care towards Fari, because every week they've let her get away with unfinished garments, and then what really got my goat was Patrick and Esme were stood there going, well, she's clearly not going to finish. And then they were quite harsh about the fact that she wasn't finishing. And it was just like, hang on a minute. Yeah. You two have built her up and let her get away with being unfinished without really being that reprimanded about it. And then, okay, don't get me wrong, I did think that she should have gone this week before the show had even started. But, they then came on and they went for her this week. And this is where the show has a duty of care, because Fari is a good sewer. And if she had 5 hours or 6 hours to do that project, it would be absolutely stunning. But, they have created that situation. And I just feel for her, because I know a lot of people were getting frustrated over the fact that she was staying in over other people for having unfinished garments. And then this week, it just goes to show, and I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know if it is the judges. I don't know if it's a runner going, you've got to do this. But, they really hung her out to dry this week.
Yeah. They clearly wanted some, because I think this comes down to as well, we have had a quiet-ish group this year. There's been very little drama, very little controversy. So maybe this was the show's way of getting a wee bit of drama in. So, but I don't know.
We'll never know. On her.
It is, yes. Yeah. No. Oh, is it fair on her? Did you say?
No, it's not. She won't know how that has been edited until this has been aired. And God knows what her social media has been like, and when she's stayed in over other people, and she's been praised even though things are unfinished. And then like I said, the judges turned this week on her and were quite dismissive of the fact, and that should have been going on earlier on.
Yes,
because she couldn't finish in time, and this week it was the same across the board.
And we've said that for weeks and weeks. She should have gone weeks ago. We were also frustrated, but we understand at least it's not necessarily anything to do with her. It's to do.
No, she's not a bad sewer.
Not at all.
I mean, even
she's created some beautiful things, but she could do so much more if she had more time. As you say, she's just as.
And that's not what the show is about. They want it done in a certain period of time, so they should have, given her the courtesy of saying, you can't do that. You need to leave.
Even Joe was mimicking that in last week's episode when he was behind that screen, wasn't he? The ghost, was it the ghost of? I can't remember what it was, but it was sort of referencing the fact that.
Yeah.
Oh, and then Rebecca with her burgundy and the whole fly thing. What did you think of that? That would just look.
Part of me wanted it to not go in,
Yeah.
Because she'd clearly missed it, and she wasn't picking up on it's there. Somebody obviously then, you almost saw somebody push Esme on to go, what is this doing down here? And part of me was like, come on, they should have let her make that mistake. It's not that I don't like Rebecca or anything, but I just feel that, you know, that's where you do get a little bit of entertainment out of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, they let her, you know, unpick it all, and then it didn't look right. I mean, if she hadn't unpicked it around the fly, it would have looked fine from the front. Okay, it wouldn't have had the fly guard in, but she wouldn't have had some of the issues they then pulled her up on. Like, oh, there's a double line of stitching. Well, yeah, because I had to put the fly guard in.
Yes.
It's still neat, though. That second line is still...
It's neater than what I could have ever done.
Yeah, it was pretty much, you know, on top of each other. There was very little in it.
I know.
I thought it was interesting. I wonder if they made sure that she finished her garment completely so that we wouldn't have a second Fari where they wouldn't be forced to try and pick between two people that hadn't finished. You know, you kind of go, I wonder were they trying to do something there?
Yes.
But
Something just felt a bit odd.
That they went
and then I felt for her with the judging there, because I actually thought, well, everything else was really good. You know, she managed to get that back on again.
I also felt that it was inappropriate for Esme to make that comment because she's a judge. It's almost something that Joe should have picked up on.
Yeah.
You know, if it was the producers, they should have said, Joe, go in and just say, what is this? Yeah. And that should have been enough. But to send in one of the judges to basically help her out.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but we have had Esme do spits in the past, didn't we?
Yeah.
But I liked her fabric, and that wool twill. I thought it was
lovely.
Yeah.
So Raf first, Serena second, Rebecca third, and Fari fourth. So other than the judging between first and second, yes, pretty much right there, wasn't it? Okay, so let's move into our favourite transformation challenge then, the parachutes.
Yes, this was interesting. Well, like the creations were interesting. I think this is the first, not one of the, but one of the first transformations where the results have been actually pretty good, apart from the odd one. But I really like I like if you look at Serena's dress, that was pretty epic.
It was stunning,
ruffly goodness all over. That was just so well done.
It was a bit like the grapes, wasn't it, from Therese last year, I felt. As in stunning.
Yes. Didn't look like the grapes.
I didn't agree with the judges here. I was fuming that Rebecca was last because I thought she got completely overlooked.
Yeah. Well, hang on. Let's just pedal this back a bit because I haven't had me two penneth yet about this.
About the parachutes.
So it's 1940s week.
Yeah.
And okay, I get we're nowhere near the 1940s, but those parachutes were not parachute silk. It was ripstop fabric, you know, so it was that plasticky type material anyway.
Nylon,
so you didn't get the drape, you know, they had the historical bit of, in the war people were making wedding dresses out of this. Well, of course they were, because it was silk, whereas this was horrific. And then, okay, I like the fact that they said, oh, you know, you can share for the first time if you want different colours and everything like that. That was brilliant. I thought that was a good idea. And, you know, that allowed Raf to kind of pilfer across all of the white out of them because nobody else was using it. And you know, that was fine in itself. But then I did feel for Rebecca in that they turned around and the only reason that they could offer on camera, at least, was the fact that they didn't like the colour.
Yes.
And then, while I'm on my rant, we had our video clip at the beginning of how important it would be to have a range of colours built into the design and to use those colours to do all of that. And then the top two garments were a white one and a blue one. And the only one that had mixed all the colours together was failed because they didn't like the colour. Well, I'm sorry, that complete judging, that complete introduction, the complete thing with that task was just rubbish.
Yeah.
Because the sewers had done what they were asked to do and it didn't meet the brief. It didn't do, you know, and they completely changed their mind halfway through and they went from wanting mixed colours to single colours. And Serena's, who I thought Rebecca's, who I thought was very good. The fact that she'd put all of those pleats in and she'd match those colours up and put them across on the bias and everything like that. it failed because of the colour.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
She should have been first in my book, but there you are.
Yeah. Well, I would have put her second myself, because I really, really like Serena's dress. I love the structure of it. I was impressed with all of that. But yeah, I thought it should have come second, because I actually I liked the colours, but I like those colours. And it came down, even Patrick said it when Esme was judging. He was like, "Oh, you don't like these colours, do you?" And that came down. I was like,
if those colours were an issue, they shouldn't have been on the parachutes that were there.
Exactly, it's what I said. They should have been given different parachutes.
It's got nothing to do with the colours, because they can't choose the colour. They didn't go down the shops and spend 4 hours trying to pick the right colours. They opened a bag and had to do what was in front of them.
In 90 minutes.
And she did incredibly. She had that belt that came round the centre. It was all very well done, like the crisscross and everything. I thought it was stunning. So,
well, it's, as you say, Serena's was lovely, but for the brief which they should be being judged on, that's where Rebecca showed way more skills.
Yes,
with her dress.
Very true. Very, very true.
So
I've just got nothing more to say. This series and the judging has really, really pushed me to my limits as to whether you want to watch it anymore. And, you know, that is horrific when it gets to that stage.
Basically, he has run out of slippers, people. We need to send him some slippers. It's all gone to pot.
But I think when you as a reviewer, you start questioning like that, or going, oh, because it's green, you don't like the colour. If you start saying that out loud, I think then there is an issue, isn't there? Really?
Yeah. Well, this is it. And I think it's interesting, because as a viewer, you should be the one going, oh, I don't like that because the colour. They should be the ones that are picking up on the technicality and, as you say, working on the detail and the
judges. They're the skilled ones.
If it's about their sewing skills and not about the colour, they should have all just been given a white parachute. They could have made all of those designs out of white. If that's what's going to upset the judges, then I'd be like, well, I want everything just done in plain white colours, because how are you supposed to please everyone? It was ridiculous reason to have her at the bottom.
Absolutely.
Especially when they also said at the beginning it's about make do and mend. Well, you've got to make do with what you got. You can't be fussed with the colour. So it was sad to see Rebecca there. Let's go on to Farry then, because we haven't touched on Farry's sort of purple and pink, just to remember that, and the ties at the back.
It was very similar to Rebecca's, except one-sided. And I think they liked hers better because she had the detail of the badge or whatever that was on it. That was the only reason I see they liked it better. I preferred the cut of Rebecca's myself. Obviously.
Well, no, because Rebecca had cut hers up and sewn it back together.
Yeah.
I know it's 90 minutes, and I know we've talked about, you know, Adam's ability to drape fabrics was phenomenal. I'm sure he would have relished this task. But Farry did exactly that. She just draped the fabrics around, and then they went slipping right down to the ground. Whereas Rebecca's had been cut and moulded into, Serena's had been cut and moulded into a shape. But it did just kind of hang there. And again, we had, oh, isn't it lovely they've used these ties and everything? So wait a minute, it didn't matter that they didn't like the colours of Farry's, but because she used the ties, hers was all right. Yeah, poor old Rebecca, they didn't like the colour, and she'd done all of that work.
Yeah. And I wasn't, we've seen Ross, he did a wedding dress.
Well, as much as I love Raph, again, I thought he was going to put himself into trouble with this, because I thought it's not going to plan. It wasn't like a 1940s wedding dress, which it didn't have to be, but it wasn't like that. But it also wasn't really a punk style wedding dress, which I thought what it was ended up almost looking like. And because it was all in white, I think he got away with hiding quite a lot of unfinished work, whereas I think if it had been different coloured panels, you'd see they didn't match up properly. Yeah,
and I couldn't quite see, because he had that massive drape, what do you call it, at the back. Train. There you go. Drape, train thing at the back. And it was a bit like, you know, they were talking about how great it was, and I was like, really? Okay.
And I think as much as I like him, I think that Rebecca should have come ahead of him.
Yeah. Well, the final score for that round was Serena first, Raph second, Farry third, Rebecca fourth. Should have just been Rebecca, Serena, Raph, Farry.
Yeah.
Or Rebecca, Raph, Serena, Farry. But
Serena, Rebecca. Either way, those two should have been at the top. I've still really, really loved Serena's.
I mean, it was, yes. I mean, it stood out, wasn't it? Like the grapes last year. As I said,
Yeah.
it was a wow number, wasn't it?
It was really inspired. It was so different to anything that had been done. It was like, oh, this is good. I like it.
She was working hard on those. She looked so red. Her cheeks were so red as she was chucking it through.
You know, like I've complained in previous ones about how we haven't had that spectacular design. And, you know, Serena is a great sewer, but it has always been a little bit boring. So the fact that she was able to pull this one off, and where she got this vision from, I don't know, because we could have done with this 3 or 4 weeks ago, you know, just to make it more interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we finally got it, either way.
Indeed.
Yes.
Now, we're going on to the made to measure, and then we start getting this very annoying, I think, foreshadowing that Serena has never won Garment of the Week. Well, what do you react when you start seeing footage like that? Did you not start going, well, clearly she's going to perhaps get it? What did you feel at all that? Or did you not feel anything?
I may have blanked that from my brain, to be honest.
Okay.
I think by that time I was so annoyed about the first 2 challenges that it took me a while to kind of work out what was going on.
Well, I then got on my high horse about that, because you don't start talking about it and saying that you've never got Garment of the Week if there's no reason for it. So I kind of thought, well, she's going to get Garment of the Week this week. Let's see what she makes for the made to measure.
I mean, don't get me wrong, she deserved it. I mean, it was bloody brilliant.
It was absolutely stunning.
So they had to do based on Dior's new look, to make an outfit inspired by. So again, we were in those realms of, well, how are you going to judge something that's inspired by? Does it have to have 3 inspired bys, or can you get away with 1 big inspired by? So it was going to be interesting to see how they judge it.
I know I had my meltdown over inspired by earlier on in the series. But that's when it's inspired by just something, you know, like inspired by Frida Kahlo, and they let them get away with it having just the colours, or inspired by the movies, where it could be anything. Whereas inspired by Dior's new look, there wasn't much you could deviate away from. And bringing it up to date, which is what we saw with Raf's and Serena's, you know, was key to that. I don't think we got as much we got very good designs, but they were inspired by that, which I find slightly more acceptable than a much broader thing where it could be, you know, well, it was the color that was Frida Kahlo's hair was. Absolutely. I don't find that acceptable, but the new look was a look that incorporated those angles, and there's not, you know, if that hadn't been there, that was very noticeable, and we saw that with the judging on the others.
Yeah. It's just that I think again, it comes down to Rebecca again. She had the peplum inspired by, but they kept saying, oh, Dior wouldn't use floral, and it just seemed to always be on the negative side of things.
Well, but if you're talking about Dior, you have Dior collection inspired by, you're going to go heavily Dior, in my opinion, rather than looking like something you know your gran would wear on a nice day.
Yes, I mean the floral wasn't great, but this is again where the judging has annoyed me, because it was needed to be inspired by, but it was also to bring your own flair to it. So we had Raf use the modern fabrics like the scuba and everything like that, and then, you know, I keep wanting to call her Serena, Rebecca used the florals because that's what she likes. She had this, you know, if it was a silhouette, you turn the lights off and you have a silhouette there, the silhouette was the new look. But
yes,
you know,
but if you go back a couple of weeks when we had Damien and his particular style of dress, that was just like it was to him, that was really nice. To everybody else, it was awful.
Yeah.
And it was judged on the fact that it was pretty awful. So, you know, I don't know. Hers was, you know, as you say, the silhouette was okay-ish, but it was still very agey.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying she should have been winning anything there.
No.
It was literally the silhouette, because the minute she put that collar on and the cuffs, she could have got away with it elsewhere, I think, but the collars and cuffs just made it fuddy-duddy.
Yeah, it just, I think it lacked the finesse and the elegance that you
Well,
associate
obviously it
with
did.
your...
The state of those buttons.
Yeah, oh God love her. Oh, such a mistake. I felt so bad for her there.
And you
Yeah,
can
the
see
time.
that she had no time left to correct it, which,
No.
you know, for that one thing, if that was us, you know, you would just take the buttons off, and all the buttons needed to do was to go over half an inch and be lined up better.
Yeah.
Everything else on there, it was, you know, if you ignore the floral, it was a good sew.
It was.
It
was a
just
good...
the buttons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but she got it finished, and that's the most important thing. With this competition, you get it finished.
Well, it wasn't until this week, was it? Let's face it.
Let's go on to Farry's, like her red and pink one, just so we can remember that one. She had a problem from the start because I think this was a classic case of they chose the fabric online because of COVID, and it wasn't as hard as she thought it was going to be. It wasn't as firm. It wasn't structural enough. So she knew basically it wasn't going to work, didn't she?
I think so.
I felt for her. I felt for them because that's not her fault, is it? Any other season, would she have gone into a fabric shop? She would have felt it and go, well, I'm not having that because that's not going to hold that lovely shape that we want from a Dior.
But is that enough to warrant not finishing it?
Yeah.
If anything, it should have been easier to handle if it wasn't as thick as you thought.
Yeah, this is it. There was too much else wrong with it.
And it wasn't that. I mean, I don't know if it was more the pink that was wrong rather than the red, because before she started even sewing it together, she turned around and said, oh, you know, I've chosen this fabric and you've got to be really careful because it will show every pucker. And then, ta-da, here it is with every pucker on show. Yeah. So she knew that that was something she had to be careful about.
Yes.
And she wasn't.
And if you knew that was the case, why would you choose a fabric that's going to highlight all the flaws? And especially, it was too tight. It was all puckered. It wasn't fitted.
Well, that was the other thing. It was too bloody tight. I mean, the stitches were popping off there. I thought one was going to take my eye out.
Yeah, your woman wouldn't.
That's the issue. She chose it online. That's where I think because of COVID.
She didn't make it online though. She made it there with the woman stood in front of her.
And she was measuring her, and you could see where it's like, oh my God, that's just going to rip down the side.
What, did the woman go off, have a cup of tea and like 10,000 cakes? Well, and her hips were 10 times bigger? No, I don't think so.
So they had to unpick that hem at the back, the back of the pleat, just so she could get into the dress.
Yeah.
It's like, God love her.
I mean, we've all been there.
Like, to be fair, normally it's because I've had the pies. But, you know, in between the being fitted and putting it on her, what on earth had happened in between? Did she just sew up a couple of inches that she shouldn't have rather than the normal? I don't know. It was just all a bit too tight, bit too squeezed.
It's like trying to get toothpaste back in the tube.
Let's move on to Serena then, and a lovely two-piece.
Well,
that was just glorious. It was just glorious.
It was a massive risk, I thought, to do trousers. Because not really new look, but that was the bit that was, you know, Serena's character coming to it.
Yeah, but she pulled it off so very well. The detail of that, and I love that Esme picked up that the end of her sleeve was at the end of the peplum, and it was all beautifully lined up. And the weight of that fabric, like the sleeves, just
wonderful weight, wasn't it?
Although that said, she did mess the trousers up, didn't she? That could have been a massive impact, you know, because she had to go and unpick all of that.
Yeah, and she did such a good job unpicking it, putting it back together and making it look as good as it did. Like, she was able to, that's where it comes to, like, your good fitting, and that's where it comes in. She was able to adjust that and make it better. So she did an incredible job. Absolutely incredible. And she definitely deserved Garment of the Week, I think.
I also think that because the trousers were black, that is often very forgiving when you've made a mistake. And you pull it out and you stitch it back together again, because there may be holes showing, but you won't pick them up on a black fabric, especially on a TV program.
Definitely not. But also, it was quite classic looking because it was just a black and a red, you know, and it was the same as Raf's. If you look at his, you could imagine the likes of Audrey Hepburn just walking out on that and looking fabulous in it with just the black and the white. It was just...
And, you know, he did himself proud by bringing those modern fabrics in to do it with, because it was the classic 1940s look, but we had that again, that tissue paper-esque type top and the scuba fabric for the skirts, and you know, he just got it spot on.
Yeah, and that top was brilliantly done. I love that Esme picked up on the fact that, you know, there was no billowing at the front, it was all at the back, which just made it, just finished it off beautifully.
His skills as a textile designer clearly played there, didn't it? I mean, he was on another level. I mean, he as a technical, as a technician, he's just up here, isn't he? And that was just coming through with his skills on this garment, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And I would have happily have both of those things in my wardrobe, both outfits, please, on order. Can I have them now?
Yeah,
they were stunning. I absolutely love them.
Yeah, it was classic. I think Raf, what we've grown to be accustomed with him, this design, this originality, playing around with fabric, whether he's dyeing it or different types of, very clever, especially as it's all that technical fabric as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think he must have, but if you look, I know I've talked about Audrey Hepburn, but I'm sure I have seen her in something pretty much exactly the same as that.
Roman Holiday.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, thank you. But
he knew his stuff.
He modernized the fabric. So both of them did incredibly, and it was the finesse. So when you come to, when you think about Dior, it's that beautiful, that lovely clean lines, the nice. And then per Rebecca, I was entirely underwhelmed.
The thing is, I mean, again, to try and, it's very unusual that I'm the one trying to pep you up, but she did look like a 1940s housewife.
Yeah.
You know, you could give her that, if anything else. In 1940s week, she did a dress that made it look like a 1940s housewife that would have been inspired by some bored 1940s housewife seeing all these glamorous pictures in their magazines in the 1940s. You know, you can imagine them running that up from some fabric they've got at home, not quite hitting the new look, you know, style, but has got that silhouette, and you know, she would have been happy going down the shops with her ration book to get her butter and her bacon and her eggs.
Not with those rations. Then Serena gets Garment of the Week, which kind of was obvious because they foreshadowed it with the idea of her not ever having Garment of the Week. We say goodbye to Fari, don't we? Yeah. And understandably so.
Well, you say understandably so because of everything that had happened up to this week. The absolute state of those buttons on Rebecca's dress. In another week, they would have sent her home over an unfinished item by Fari.
Yes,
and there was a small part of me that had a slipper in hand ready for that announcement.
Yeah, especially when Rebecca did say, she said, "Oh, this has cost me. I'm going to go home this week."
Because she's seen it happen every other week. She's seen Fari glide through with unfinished garments.
And it comes down to that editing, because they used that trail of her having a bit of a huff at those buttons at the end of last episode. And we were like, oh, Rebecca's going home. Rebecca's got clever editing there.
Well, it's not clever, is it? It's just, weak. It's lazy editing. What
I do want to talk about, how do you take, I don't know how detailed you watched it, the little conflab between Patrick and Esme before who was going home. Did you notice anything there in the discussion?
Well, I noticed it was worthless. When you get down to 4 people, I mean, like I said, Raf had somehow dodged a bullet every round. I love him, but there were elements that were wrong. And so they're sat there going, well, these two are safe, which is why when Rebecca had done that with her buttons, I was like, well, they're forgiven Fari for absolutely everything else. Why won't they do it now?
Yeah.
And Rebecca has done some, and like I said, all Rebecca needed to do was realign those buttons. There was nothing wrong with the rest of the dress, sewing wise.
Yeah.
So I was ready to be furious.
Well, I was, because at one point Patrick says he starts talking about Rebecca being excellent, and I'm like, hang on, you said Rebecca's transformation challenge was excellent, but you put her bottom at 4. Yeah. So what's going on there?
I think Esme won the battle on that one because he liked it, and he even said he liked it, but he said, "Oh, you don't like these colours," And she didn't like the colors, and she made a big fuss about pulling out the yellow segment and everything at the front. And it was like,
But the thing is the way that dress was draped, you couldn't even see the yellow bit because it was the bit that was behind the folds.
Yeah, I think she was just looking for things.
And even and yes, okay, we did see that Patrick said he liked it, but from a sewing point of view, that should overrule anything to do with colour.
Yeah.
Especially in that challenge where you were limited by what you had in front of you.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think so. But then again, when you think about the problem that she had as well, where she had to unpick and add in the zip guard, whatever you might call that. But I thought it was interesting as well, if you look back, because they said to her as well at the start, wasn't it, that they said, oh, you need to make sure you read the instructions really well. And I thought that was foreshadowing that she might be going home as well, because it was like, oh, have we another Damien incident where she's gonna, but.
So we're left now with Raf, Serena and Rebecca, our final.
Yeah, I think it's going to be between Serena and Raf, myself.
I think, well, I don't know. I think now, do you not feel that Rebecca is going suddenly up like this?
It's going to be difficult because we've got Serena, who is an excellent seamstress, and we've got Raf, who is an excellent designer. We've said in previous shows that we haven't got that embodied in one person. So somebody is going to do something that will mess that up for them. Now, whether Raf will design something fabulous, but just then can't quite get it sewn together, or whether Serena will do something to a really high standard, but it just looks a bit boring because it's not as exciting, that could be the issue. Yeah. I think if Rebecca comes through and wins it, well, good on you, lass, for doing it, but I don't know if she's got it in her to surpass those two, because she can't bring together the sewing / designer approach.
No.
We've seen as well this thing, like with Raf in the previous, was it the previous series or the one before, with the guy, I've forgotten his name again, the guy Ricardo, where he went in and we all thought he was going to win, and then he messed up the waistcoat in the first one, and then he did that absolutely stunning dress with that paper thin material again, but it wasn't enough to bring him back round and win. So Raf has got to, he can do it if he can design something spectacular and deliver it.
But I think as well, Serena showed a spark of good design with the transformation challenge and with that Dior finish as well.
I think that's good point. I think that's why it's got to be between those two.
Perhaps it's me looking into the editing too much. I think they're pushing us that way to Raf and Serena, but actually Rebecca's going to come through and we're going to be like, oh my God, that was an amazing final.
Don't push your luck.
All right. I go Rebecca.
I'll go Raf.
Oh, and I'll go Serena then.
You don't have to.
Well, no, because I think she could pull something out of the bag.
Right, that leads us nicely on, because we want to hear what you think in the comments. So it leads us nicely on to a little thank you from us to you, the viewer and the commenters. We've put together some bundles of fabric from the shop. I've got 1.5 meters of poplin cotton. I've got 2 meters of quilting fabric. I've got another 2 meters of quilting fabric and 1 meter of what's that? That's like a canvas calico, and then a whopping Essex linen, a lovely dress fabric, 4 meters, to give away to the commenters who always come back week on, week out to leave comments and get involved in the conversation. So what we will do is, if you comment on the video like you normally do, we'll put all your names in the hat, and in the final next week, we will pull those names out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we'll send you a prize. Just to say thank you very much, because they haven't they, you two? They've been coming back week on, week out, commenting, joining in, and we've loved their discussions, haven't we?
Yes. Even if some of them still are looking after Ting and making sure he feels good about himself.
It's when I need to put on my Amazon wish lists all my slipper sizes, don't I?
Yes, and there's so many of the. There's Wendy, there's Susan, there's Dorothy from South Africa as well. I know that's where she's.
That'll cost a lot.
Yes, and it'll go wherever. Doesn't matter where you are. I will post it out. From us to you to say thank you for coming back. We really appreciate it. We've loved doing it. It's 9 weeks have gone. Everyone, where's that gone?
That's mad, isn't it?
It's felt a bit of a drag at times with some of this judging, I tell you.
Yes.
I was going to say, what is that you in a dress?
And it's been quite clear from, it's not just us and our love for the programme. It is clear that that's been more so than ever before, because we're reading other people's comments about the judging.
Yeah.
I will make a note, though, in case anyone is watching from the Great British Sewing Bee, that one of the reasons I think this has raised a lot of comment this year is because people are not happy with perhaps how things have played out. And that's where it's brought the consensus together, unfortunately. So, yeah, they're going to have to do a lot of work next year to win over some of these viewers and commenters.
Yeah, to go back to it, because you don't want to end up watching one of these shows where you just get fed up with it's all constantly rigged all of the time.
Yeah.
And there's clearly an audience for it. They clearly want to watch sewing stuff. We do, don't we? We're all here. There is a gap for that. And I know we criticise it and we analyse it, and some people say it's too much detail, but it's because we love it. It's just like the pundits of the football world after a football match. It's great to have this opportunity to talk about it.
Except better, like really, football.
This is, way more important than kicking a ball around.
Absolutely.
If there are any sewers from the Sewing Bee, this year's Sewing Bee watching, because there could well be. I know Adam watches John's on Facebook. I hope that throughout the season that you've taken our comments as of your work and have enjoyed listening to our comments, and I hope we haven't upset too many of you.
If Adam's watching, we need to get him on next year.
That would be
yes.
wonderful, wouldn't it?
At some point, it'd be nice to get Janet back as well. I liked Janet.
Yes. And our final won't be a long episode. Well, it never is, because it's normally just
depends what happens.
Oh, well, yes.
It depends if there's any slippers left in things. How does that point? You know what I mean?
Well, there we are. We'll leave it there. So comment on the video, and then we could be pulling your name out of the hat live as we film next week. So let us know in the comments as well who you think now might win. Otherwise, your thoughts on the episode, as always, great. Don't you think? Loved it. Loved every minute of it, haven't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So until then, happy sewing and see you.